The one that I want to, just very, and then I can go into anything else you want to talk about, is the third bridge discussion. I don't know how many of you follow this closely, but a number of us on the council have been extremely concerned about the proposal that was recommended to us as the best alternative for development of a third bridge across the Willamette, somewhere in the city. It was a $800 million behemoth project connecting the Salem Parkway on the east, across the river, along the river in a raised viaduct stretching all the way along Edgewater to Rosemont. If you know how this all fits together, it's actually several miles of concrete, both raised and on the ground and all the rest of it, being pretty much designed by the Oregon Department of Transportation, which has a bridge aesthetic that leaves a lot to be desired if you have crossed many of their bridges. The result was really a lack of thinking about impact on the Highland neighborhood. This occurs at Pine Street, and how that would be dealt with in terms of the Highland neighborhood, both its housing stock and its businesses and job opportunities, really had a tremendous impact there. It came across the river and hit a viaduct that stretched for a couple of miles along the river, essentially creating the phenomenon that we see in Portland on the east side of the Willamette, where you virtually created a wall separating East and West Portland. And a good friend of mine, Vera Katz, when she was mayor, spent much of her time as mayor trying to figure out how to get rid of a viaduct like we would be building. I thought of it as soon as I saw this, having talked to her about it a number of times, and it's like, why would you recreate someone else's problem they spend so much time trying to fix? And then you would wipe out essentially the Edgewater area in West Salem, which currently the city is, it's one of our urban renewal zones, and we're investing a substantial amount of public and private money into redeveloping into, surprisingly, a pedestrian-friendly community area, and of shops and back on 2nd Street housing. The other reality for me is this is all in my ward I represent. So it caught my attention very quickly and had me really, really concerned about it. And I want to explain, just so I'm putting it in a context that you'll understand where I'm coming from. I don't have any wild objection to a third bridge. You can bridge this thing 10 times for all me. I mean, if you can figure out a reason for it and people are interested and you all will vote to pay for it, bridge her down, you know. But don't poke it into the river and create flooding problems back from it. Don't destroy neighborhoods without some sort of plan that makes some sense. And I would hope along the way there would be a rational and really understandable explanation of its traffic benefits and a positive inclusion of bicycle and pedestrian opportunities on these bridges. I found none of that in the option that was initially proposed. But I'll tell you, because you mentioned politics, the politics of it quite simply are, there is a majority of city council that is going to build that bridge. And there is a majority that would build that big bridge if they could get the public to vote for it. Okay, so that's where we are today. This is my analysis of it at this point. So myself, Councilor Dickey, who shares part of area with me. We actually split our boards at Pine Street, and Councilor Tester, the three of us were very concerned about what was going on. We have worked out, and it will be the subject of public hearing on April 22nd. We think an alternative sort of, okay, that's why we need comment, because none of us are engineers, none of us are specialists in this area, but what we think will be available for the public to comment on is a substantially scaled back version. It is, instead of a connection between I-5 running a freeway through town to connect to Highway 22, essentially the freeway to the casino is how I see it. In fact, I saw your button. I was really, I like that. But it would be instead a connection between West Salem and North Salem, and provide, I think, some opportunities to talk about bridgehead redevelopment planning on both sides of the river, improvements in the Highland neighborhood, providing better and more available housing and business opportunities, get rid of that long viaduct, and that goes away, and talk about a signature bridge. And when I say that, I mean one that looks like kind of a cool bridge, like our other bridges, except for Marion Center, but I think begins to participate in a theme of design, and see if that is something people would be interested in. I think it has economic development opportunities, particularly it fits well with our North Salem planning ideas. You heard Annie talking about the economic development opportunities and planning going on in North Salem. It looks at a particularly underdeveloped and in some cases really sketchy housing in that area that really needs to be looked at again to see if there's something else we can do. And in my mind, that's how I see it, and we'll see how it all plays out. I have been taken with what happened up in Portland, in the St. John's area, and in the Selwood area, where you saw substantial neighborhood enhancement, but it took place over time. You know, these are, but you actually have the community of Selwood, the community of St. John's, and I would hope the potential, the community of Highland in that north end, sort of redeveloping around a transportation project rather than using the Mount Hood Freeway project, which has come roaring through, condemn a lot of land, create a cloud over the top of a whole range of both residential and commercial property, and end up with what's happened in Portland, even now along the path of the old Mount Hood Freeway proposal, which had disappeared, 30 years ago. So that's kind of where we're starting to look at it. We believe that in this process, city councilors, as a majority, have seen the light and are looking at a much smaller project. The response was not positive to this large project. And I think that we're starting to talk in a much, much more realistic way about whether or not the river ought to be bridged at that point. But that's kind of where the third bridge stands. And April 22nd at City Council is the opportunity to comment on this thing. It will be, I think it's on the website now, although not in the level of detail that really needs to be presented to the public, but it will, in that April 22nd council agenda, be a great opportunity to look at least this idea.
Is that listed as a public hearing?
Yes, it'll be a public hearing.